Hello and welcome to the GHS ServiceNow Service Request training. This is part one of a two-part recording. Part one, I'm going to take you through a series of slides and give you a high-level overview of the process. And we're going to take a look at a few examples strictly from the slides. Part two is an actual recorded demo where I take you through the same three request types. So I kind of walk you through the process end to end. So this is more of the lecture part, and the other one is the other part is the more practical part. In this section, we're going to go through the general benefits or the general activities of the request fulfillment process. We're going to look at the ServiceNow Service Catalog and how you'd utilize it, how you use the catalog as your source. We're going to look at the sequential activities that take place during the request process. We're going to talk about some roles, email notifications. We'll look at the workflow. Then we're going to take a look at a few practical examples. Lastly, we're going to finish up with some step-by-step instructions on how to work with catalog tasks and how to ensure the fact that all the work that you need to be doing is getting done to fulfill these tasks. One of the things you should have done by this point is you should have taken the GHS ServiceNow navigation training. That is another session that was delivered to teach people the general basics of using the ServiceNow platform. In that session, you'll learn about using the application navigator, working with lists and columns and context menus, sorting, grouping, filtering, personalizing lists, and using forms and so on. Okay. We don't go into a lot of tremendous detail about how to use the application in this session. We're really focused more on the process of request fulfillment. Accessing ServiceNow, you'll do it through the ghsprod.servicenow.com link. And what you'll see there is you'll get asked to sign in, username and password. Okay. First off, what is a service request? Now, in a lot of organizations that I work with, service requests and incidents tend to get lumped together into this big category of tickets or cases or whatever word you'd like to use. Service requests and incidents, though, are two very different things. An incident is an interruption in service. A user has access to something and it breaks, as opposed to a request where a user may not have access to something, but they need to get access. They're asking for something new. Okay. Some of the things that you might use a service request for, people asking for replacement mice or keyboards. Maybe they need to have a new user account created. You might see one of the examples we're going to do is requesting a new SharePoint site be created. Now, if you already have the SharePoint site and something's wrong with it, you would report an incident. If you want to get the SharePoint site in the first place, you would be using a service request. We make this distinction because the way you approach the work is completely different. In an incident, someone is already taking advantage of a service. Something's working the way it's supposed to. We're gaining benefit from it. But a request, we're not currently gaining any benefit from something. Someone's just lacking something. It's not like their job is no longer able to function. The request fulfillment process really has a couple of key objectives. You want to be able to provide information to employees. I like to use the sort of silly example if somebody needs to know what pizza places deliver late night. You can call the help desk. The help desk would then use a service request to give you the information. You might ask for advice or on-the-spot training. How do I do a Microsoft mail merge? Okay. You might request access or request to be granted access to a service. Maybe you already have a Lawson account and you can do financial reporting, but you can't create purchase orders. You might request access to those purchase order capability. The value, it's a quick and effective way to access standard services, reduce cost. A lot of these requests can actually be automated. And you'll see in this demonstration that Things like approval requests and assignment tasks are really automated and generated by workflow, trying to create some efficiencies in the process. Some of the key roles, there will be a requester, or there's a customer, there's a person asking for something. Now, the person who's requesting doesn't necessarily have to be the person who is receiving the benefits of the request. Someone can request something on someone else's behalf. Okay, there'd be reasons to go back to the requester for maybe asking for additional information or giving them notifications, but there'd also be reasons to go to the actual requested for person. The help desk analyst, this is the person who's going to be primarily responsible for fulfilling the tasks. This is all dependent on what's being asked for. If someone's asking for a password reset, then it would be that service desk analyst that would be the primary person doing that type of work. Okay. There are also request managers. They oversee the day-to-day execution of the process. Individual request items might have their own managers keeping an eye on the effectiveness of their request process. Approvers. Approvers may or may not be required when submitting a request. A couple of examples, the rules that have been applied. If you are requesting a password reset, no one really needs to approve that. Someone does need to verify you are who you say you are, but you don't necessarily need to go and get permission to do that. On the other hand, if someone requests a new SharePoint site, a rule has been put in place that if you are a manager level or above, you do not require an approval. But if you are a manager below a manager's level, you would require an approval. Fulfillment groups might be some groups that get assigned to fulfillment tasks. Also seen in the application as assignment group. And then there is a process owner for request fulfillment. This is the person who's making sure that the tools are in place in order for request fulfillment to be effective. Some of the email notifications, there's a whole series of notifications here that I'm not going to read through to you all in detail. You will have access to these slides, so you will be able to see the details as needed. Whenever a request is created, notifications get sent to the requester. If something's been submitted on their behalf, a notification will get set. Tasks that get assigned to groups send notifications to the group. Approvals will also send a notification to the person who is asked to approve. There are a few built-in SLAs, like after something is in pending approval for 2 days, a CC gets sent out to someone. I'll let you read through those on your own. Service catalog process. The process for service catalog is slightly different. It looks a little bit it's slightly different than incident. You definitely have this identification activity up front. A lot of the requests that come in through the service desk. And when the phone rings at the service desk agent doesn't necessarily know if it's an incident or a service request. So the rule of thumb is you treat everything like it's an incident until you learn otherwise. This is all part of that identification activity. So when you identify that you've got a request, you would then begin the request fulfillment process and not the incident management process. So you've identified the request, you're going to log it. You figure out what you've got and you write it down. Those are great first 2 steps. You're going to do some sort of processing. Now, in the case of ServiceNow, what you're doing for this processing is you're actually filling out a form that includes a series of questions, and you provide answers. The request then goes off for approval. After approval, there is fulfillment. These are a series of tasks that get assigned, and then the request is then tracked over time. So identification, those incoming phone calls to the service desk. Someone calls the service desk and says, I can't do purchase orders, right? You don't know if that's an incident or if that's a service request yet. You might ask the question, have you ever been able to do purchase orders? No, I don't seem to have permission to do purchase orders. Okay, great. Let me submit that request on your behalf to see if we can grant you access to creating purchase orders. Okay. Another way is you could direct the users directly to the ESS portal, the Employee Self-Service Portal. This is where they'll have the ability to actually request things for themselves. The way you access the service catalog is under the service catalog application, you can choose catalog. There is a similar link, or an identical link actually, called Service Catalog under the self-service application as well. So you could go to the self-service application and choose Service Catalog. That would get you the same results. And what you see here is a Service Catalog page that has a series of categories with items within the categories. Each of those items is selectable. The categories that have been designated are access, user account access, you've got application access, landline, voicemail request, security changes, access security changes, and password resets. You also have hardware requests, which actually I don't see displayed on the screenshot. You do have applications, a number of GE applications listed there. Reports, information services, network connectivity, mobile computers, and handhelds. On the right-hand side of this screenshot, you'll see that there's two other boxes. There's something called a shopping cart, and there's another item there called top requests. The top requests basically is a rotating list of the most frequently asked for things. Okay, so if you're just curious to see what people are requesting, that top request would give you the most popular requests, the top 5 in order. The way the shopping cart works is very much like your Amazon.com. You might select one item from this catalog, and add it to your shopping cart, and then go back and select another item, and select a third. Maybe there's 3 different applications that you wish to have access to. You could put each one of those into your shopping cart without submitting your request. Once you've decided you've finished your request, you could then hit submit a single request asking for permission for multiple applications. There are a few requests that are going to have some requirements. There's some requirements that have some level restrictions. Must be a supervisor level or above to request application access. Okay, your insurance card must be attached to the request if you're going to do a GE insurance question. Okay. You'll see pop-up windows that will appear that will give you an indication whether or not something has been completed or not, if there's something you need to add on to a particular request. Searching for requests. At the top of the service catalog, you do have a search window, a search form. Let me just pop back and show you. You see the search here at the top. If you type in what you're searching for, this list will grow over time and potentially could become quite extensive. There also might be things that you can request that don't appear on this list, and someone might have to tell you how to get to it. You would have to search. When you type in that search, it will bring back the options that are available. So here we've asked for access. And by asking for access, anything that contains the word access will appear. When you're actually going to submit a request, you choose the request from the list, and a form will appear. In this form, you really have 2 major parts. On the left-hand side, you see that there is a form with variables. These are questions and answers. They're requested for name. They're requested for phone number, their location, right? Their extension. All of those things, all of those variables in this particular form started out with red marks next to them saying that they're mandatory. Bright red marks mean something is mandatory. You must fill in that data before you move forward. Now, in this particular case, if you put the employee's Joe employee, or you put the requested for name in there, and the system can recognize whether or not they've got a specific location associated to them, then it would automatically populate some of that data. The second part of the screen is the shopping cart that I had mentioned before. You could simply add something to your cart, or you could click Order Now. Right now, the shopping cart is empty. If you clicked Order Now, the only thing that would be on that request would be a landline voicemail request. If you added it to the cart and you went back and chose more items, you would see a list building up under shopping cart. And when you would click Order Now, everything in your shopping cart would be submitted under that single request. Now, there's not necessarily a problem with doing that. If you have multiple items under a single shopping cart, and then you submit them as a request, the request really just becomes a container for all the things that you need. Each individual item that you ask for, even they can be completely unrelated to each other, will have its own fulfillment process. So just by the fact that you put them on your shopping cart and you ask for them all at once doesn't actually alter the way things are going to be delivered to you. Each individual thing that you request will be delivered to you on its own. So here's that password reset form. You notice here that there's a their name, their phone number, and their location. This actually will pre-populate. If the person who you request for has a phone number and a location, those fields will automatically fill in. One of the items here at the bottom, you've got this, what system are you locked out of? That will give you a list of systems that you can ask for a password reset. Citrix, DBS, eClientWorks, etc. You would choose from this drop-down list the system that you need a reset for. So you see that there's fairly strong step-by-step instructions here in the slide deck. And again, you're going to have these as examples to work with. You're going to have the slides. And also the second recording in this series for request fulfillment, I do go through step-by-step the password reset request. Requesting for a SharePoint site, a new SharePoint site. This is another one where I go through this one step by step in the accompanying recording of this training. Just like the password reset, the name, phone number, and location, once you give it a name, if it can fill in the phone number and location, the system will do it for you. It will also get you a department and a title, a job title, if those also exist on the user's record. You'll then have to give it a SharePoint site name and the owner's of site network ID. There's a series of checkboxes there. These are individual checkboxes that allows you to select multiple items from that list. You just simply check what it is you'd like to have, and that will pass that information on to the technician who will then fulfill this request for you. The general request question, this is really intended to be kind of the other item. If there's something on the request, in the request catalog, or I'm sorry, if there's something missing from the request catalog, but you'd like to ask for something, you could use this general request/question. This will give you the ability to submit a question to someone, and they will then follow up with the particular need. If you might ask for a mouse, a replacement mouse. You might be asking for one of those signature keypads, the USB signature keypads to put to a laptop so you can do some drawing or capture signatures. Those are items that aren't necessarily included in the catalog at this initial release. If the administrators find out over time that the general question is used repetitively for certain things, this will be the reason why you might add more catalog items in the future. There is some alert message to this one at the top. Be sure to read that alert message when you do submit. I do go through the general request as an example also in the accompanying recording. The form itself has the alert at the top there, you see it. Here, there's a few rules in the background. If you were to choose from this multiple choice here, what is your request related to? If you were to choose, for example, hardware, another list would pop up, and you would choose what type of hardware you're dealing with. It doesn't show you that list because you might not need to see it. If you choose software, you would see something else. Okay. So here, you're first off being asked, are you creating this on someone else's behalf? If so, if you were to say yes, then it would pop up a field there asking you to give the name. I'll demonstrate this in a few minutes. Here are the values that are related. If you were to choose software, you would see this list of software that you could request. If you were to choose hardware, you would see this list of hardware items. Insurance, general IT, network, remote, they have no related options made available. You'll just have to describe in detail what your need is in order to enable someone to fulfill your request. The shopping cart. We've talked about the shopping cart a couple of times. Here's an example. The shopping cart now has 3 items in it. You could always edit the cart, or you could proceed to checkout. Continue shopping takes you back to the service catalog again. Now remember, each one of these items in the cart can have its own fulfillment path, can go down its own road. Okay. Once you've actually submitted the cart, you'll see this is the order completion form. It's asking you to confirm, do you want to include all 3 of these items? At this point, you might decide you're going to delete maybe the SharePoint site. Maybe you don't need it, or you can't wait 5 days for it. Okay. You do see expected delivery times there. All 3 of these on the same request. Each one of these will be routed off to a different individual. You do have an opportunity at this time to change the requested for, and also the ability to change their delivery address. Maybe you're going to specifically have someone bring a mouse to a conference room because you're working in a conference room for a period of time on a special project. You're not at your regular office location. Order verification. The order then gets verified and reviewed. You're verifying whether or not you want to include everything, and then you're hitting submit order. That's that screen we just left. Once you hit submit order, the system in this particular example is going to create 4 different data records, at least 4, I should say. It's going to create a request for the overall request for all 3 items. And then it's going to create an individual request item, line item record for each one of these. Here's the submission. You see that the request has been submitted. This is the request number that you've been given. And the individual items have then been added. This is a slightly different example than what we had on the previous page. But you do see the stages here. Notice the little plus minus box next to the stage icons. This allows you to expand or contract the stages. Something that is green has been completed, something that is blue is currently being executed, and something that is gray has not happened yet. Approvals. There's a standard approval on a service request of $1,000 or more. This has actually been disabled. This is a standard ServiceNow approval threshold, but requests in this particular case don't have dollar amounts associated to them. The chargebacks are being done kind of more from an administrative perspective in the back end. So you don't need to worry about item number 2 here. There really is no dollar threshold on the request itself. There are specific approvals that may be generated by the individual items. So certain items might require additional permission. When an approval is created, an approval record gets assigned to an individual based on the workflow. An email notification will be sent out to both the requester and to the approver. Then 2 business days later, a reminder will be sent out. And if approval is not received within 5 days, the request is closed and appropriate notifications are sent. So the default position would be reject. View and updating the service request. If you're an individual, and I believe everybody going through this recording is going to be a process user in ServiceNow. As a process user, as a person who's going to be working in IT, you will see a service catalog application like you see in this green box in the upper left-hand corner. The catalog itself takes you to the choices. The requests, the items, and the tasks are the data that get created to manage the fulfillment of request items. The fulfillment is done through the actual completion of tasks. Once all the tasks are finished, the item is completed. Once all items under a single request are completed, the request is completed and closed. So tasks are the actual work. The item is the thing that you're working on, and the request is the umbrella that keeps it all wrapped together. When you're looking at the individual requests, you see the numbering scheme for requests is REQ. You do have a context menu here that's available by right-clicking the title bar. You could maybe look at requests submitted by a particular individual. You might look at requests by due date. You could, on the request itself, there's no indication what is being requested. Okay, that's a little tricky. On the request itself, there's no indicator that tells you what's actually being requested. You would need to go to the request items to see that. Here's an example of grouping by the requester, requested for. You see the number of people that have requested things for them. Jerry's very busy here. Jerry Kendall has a number of things. Okay. When you look at the request itself, you can click into it by either clicking the blue information icon or clicking the number of the request. That takes you to a request form. It's a very light form. But down below, you'll see a series of related lists. And the one that's important to us is the requested items list. This is an example of an application access and or training request. That's the request item. There's the RITM number. So we have an REQ, which is this parent request. That's the umbrella that I was describing. But the RITM is the thing that's being requested. You can open or access that RITM by simply clicking the information icon or the number of the item. Now there is a tab here for approvers and for group approvals. Approvers and group approvals have been disabled for the workflow for generating them have been disabled in this initial phase. It's possible that these will be reactivated at some point. So at the request level, you're not sending out requests for approvals. You are sending out approval requests at the item level. If you were to navigate to the requested items view, I think you'd see something that's much more interesting. Okay, now let me just jump back here and point this out. There, we first looked at the request list. Now we're going to look at this items list. The items list, where'd it go? There it is. That's what I want. The requested items list shows you the things that people are asking for. Actually, that's the one I wanted. Shows you the things that people are asking for. So you could do a nice group by items here and see, all right, how many BlackBerry requests or how many carpet cleaning requests. This is obviously some demo data. This isn't really live stuff. But you might see how many password resets did we have this week. You would be able to determine that by looking at the requested items list. You'd also be able to see what stage they're in. Get a nice indicator, visual indicator of where things are. How close. This one is almost completed. The new mobile device tablet is waiting for installation. So here's an example that I was describing before. Right-clicking the title bar next to item and choosing group by item. And you see down below here, how many application accesses or training requests have you had this week? There are 35 of them. Okay. It's pretty busy. It's a pretty busy request. You can then go look at the individual records for each of those, expand on those, and then drill into the detail. You will see a due date. The due date calculates based on the expected delivery date. So you could sort things by due date. Tasks are the third level. I say that because requests really are the overall umbrella. The request contains multiple items, and then each individual one of those items might have a series of fulfillment tasks associated to them. This is where you would go to see what work you need to do. You would go to the items view to see what items are being requested, but you would go to the tasks list, the catalog tasks, to see what work you need to do. Let's say you do site creation for SharePoint. You might come to this task list and sort on all the site creation tasks that have been generated and assign them all to yourself. And then sit down in one long session, create all the sites that have been requested, and simply go back and mark all of those tasks as completed. So if you do work to fulfill requests, this is where you want to be. One of the things that's really nice about the item, when you're looking at the item, under the related links, there's an opportunity to show the workflow. Showing the workflow will bring up a graphical image that lays out what tasks need to happen and when. You'll also see at the bottom of the list, at the bottom of that item, the requested item form, any catalog tasks that have been created, any approvers necessary, if there are any groups have been assigned for approval. There will also be any SLAs that could be associated to a particular item. This is what a show workflow looks like. The show workflow gives you a graphical representation of the activities that have taken place and that still need to take place. Anything that is blue is currently being executed. Anything that is green, anything that's blue has completed. Anything green has been executed. We actually have to correct our slide here. Everything that's gray has not happened yet. Based on the item that was requested, certain tasks will be created. Sometimes tasks will be created in sequence, which means one task has to complete before the next task gets created. On some scenarios, multiple tasks might be created up front. Some scenarios, tasks might need to be completed in parallel. Or you might want to give somebody a heads up that they're going to have some work coming their way, so pending tasks might be generated. In most cases, assignment groups automatically get assigned to individual tasks. I'll give you an example. When you submit a password reset, the first task that gets created is verify the person's identity. That task gets assigned to the service center. Someone from the service center then picks up that task and can put themselves into the assigned to field, allowing them to then take ownership and fulfill that task. Okay. Tasks can also be assigned to specific individuals. In some cases, the requester is asked to verify that the thing that they've requested is actually completed as expected. That would not be assigned to a group, but it would be assigned to an individual. Approvals are assigned automatically, and they cannot be reassigned. Okay? But approvals are not created until they're needed as part of the workflow. The actual catalog task form, when you're doing the fulfillment work, this is a configure BlackBerry activity. You would go through and follow a series of instructions. Okay. Open the task record, review the details, complete the actions required, provide work notes, click Update, if additional work is required, or a closed task if the task is now completed. The task will be set to closed complete, and the next task in the sequence will be initiated. You see here examples of tasks being fulfilled. In this particular case, there are 2 tasks, both of which have been closed complete. Okay, those 2, the completion of those tasks would have then completed the application install request item, which is in this list down below. Under this request, application install item, we see that our workflow has completed. Everything is green. Everything is good. Tracking service requests, you do have the ability to look at open records, look at your requests. There's a module there to look at my requests and my request items. You will be able to use the service catalog tool with the requests, items, and tasks modules. There's also a number of reports. You can get list reports and pie charts and graphs and add things to your home page. Knowledge-based training will give you some information on how to access some of that other information as well. The overall summary here, you're going to receive the request. You're going to submit that request form. If approvals are needed, approvals will be sent out. Items created, approvals for the actual request. Now, this piece has been disabled. So this approval request piece here has been disabled. Items then get created sequentially on the form. Approvals and tasks get sent out for those. The work gets completed. Tasks get closed. The overall request gets closed. So requests contain items. Items then have multiple tasks. Okay. This is a recording, so I apologize we don't have an opportunity for questions. The accompanying video to this recording will demonstrate some live action fulfillment of 3 individual request items. So I do encourage you to watch that video as well. Thank you for listening.